Hi, this is Loci from Beta Folders. In this video, we'll look at how to run multiple Foldit clients in the Windows environment. And we could subtitle this video, My Desktop and How It Got This Complicated. So just quickly, we're looking at my desktop, and basically I have 8 Foldit icons here, 1 through 4, 5 through 8. That lets me run up to 8 separate clients in 8 separate folders. And so we'll look at how I set that up and how you can do the same. And so probably the first question is, why would you want to go to all this trouble and create all this complexity? And there are a couple of different answers to that. And first is, of course, there are multiple puzzles running at the same time, and you can be a soloist and an evolver. And so if you want to do everything, you may need to have more than one client. And short of getting a bunch of computers, you may just want to do it on your one computer. So the second part goes along with that, and that is that your computer may actually have multiple processors. Most recent computers do. And if you're only running one client, you can only really use one processor effectively. Now, you can use a little bit more than that, but for the main CPU-intensive folding part, each folded client can only use one processor. Really, I should say one logical processor. And so that means that if you have, say, a 4-processor machine and you're running one client, you're letting 75% of your resources go to waste. And if you're running an 8-processor machine and you're running one client, well, you're letting 7/8 of your possible computing power go to waste. So that's kind of a hint as to why I have 8 folders here, and that we're looking at an 8-processor machine here. One question that comes out of that is how did we determine how many processors we have on a given machine? And there are several ways to do that, and I'll run through them. First, if you go and open up a command window, and I've already done that, and then you type in this lovely little command, set pipe to, the pipe character is the vertical bar, and then find and the word processor in quotes, and we'll run that. And you can see that gives us back a variable called number of processors, and it happens to be 8 on this system. So that's one text-based way to determine how many processors that you have. Another way to determine the number of processors, and this applies to all versions of Windows. I'm looking at Windows 10 here, but you have the equivalent thing on older versions as well. So if you right-click on your taskbar, and I've set my taskbar to auto-hide, so that's why it seems a little shy, and start Task Manager. And I've already started a Task Manager. And if you look on this Performance tab, you'll see that there's a lovely graph of CPU, and that's showing 8 little graphs here, meaning that I have 8 little logical processors, 8 cores or 8 CPUs. It's possible that you'd see only one graph here, and so if I go to change graph to overall utilization, you may see only that one big graph. So to change that, you right-click on the graph and select logical processors instead. And that way you see the 8 logical processors, and they're pretty busy. Okay, so that's a second way to look at that. Third way is something called Process Explorer from Sysinternals, and it's actually available from Microsoft, and got that running here too. And that's a sort of a replacement for the Task Manager, and it has a lot more features. And so here you can see I've got a bunch of folded clients running on the system at the moment, and most of them are pulling a little bit over 12.5%. So some of them are as high as 13, some of them are a little bit lower. And so again, with an 8-processor system, 4 processors would be 25% each, 8 processors would be 12.5% each, and each of these clients actually has multiple threads, which are like little programs within the program, and each of those threads can use a little bit more CPU, but there'll be a main thread that will use most of the CPU power. And as a matter of fact, we can look at that. So if we right-click on one of the busy folded clients, select Properties, so you can see it's CPU usage on the performance graph here, but what is more interesting is the Threads tab. So there we go. So there you see on the Threads tab that we have one thread that's using almost that 12.5%. Sometimes we'll have another thread that kicks in for a short while, but Usually there's just that one thread that's using almost all the CPU, and that corresponds to 100% of one of your logical processors. If we click on this graph up here, this will show me my 8 processors, or it may show me one big graph and I just use this checkbox down here. Or the other way to see that is to view system information, and again that gives me the same graph, and I can look at different aspects or look at each of the resources separately. So that's Process Explorer. Okay, so once you know how many processors you have, you know how many clients you can run without things slowing down too much. And even though I have an 8 processor system, I usually like to run no more than 7 clients at one time, because as we've seen, sometimes a client will get a little busy and you'll have 2 busy threads within a client, so using 2 logical processors. Also, I'd like to be able to use my system for other things, and so I kind of reserve that 8th logical processor for whatever else I'm doing and for the occasional needs of the Foldit clients that are running. No reason you can't run more Foldit clients than you have logical processors. Just everything will slow down. So I like each client to run about as quickly as it can, get as much work done in as little time as it can. So back to my desktop and how it got this way. So what I like to do, this is my system, is I have one directory, Foldit here. Each individual client is a folder under that directory. Now I have this one Foldit demo here on the desktop, and if we look at the properties for that, we can see it's actually this C Foldit 2015-0708. So now the nifty thing about Foldit is that on Windows it's almost what I'd call a portable installation, in that you can just copy your installation folder and not have to worry about things, and generally speaking that's just fine. The only area that you'd see an issue is if you go to uninstall the client, then the uninstaller that's built by the install program is going to be wrong if you do this copying thing. Generally you're not going to want to uninstall, you'll just install and install again. To make a new Foldit client, what I do is simply go up here to an existing one like this one that I called Foldit Demo, and then I'll right click on that and just drag it down to a blank spot and let go, and then I get a context menu because it was a right click and drag, and I'll just say copy here, and that will pop up a lovely little window. Goes pretty quickly despite being a busy system, and voila, I have a copy. So then I can just click on that and rename it, and I'll call it Foldit New Demo. So then you saw that I had icons on my desktop, and the way I got those icons is again by just dragging things around. So I'm going to just drag that folder to my desktop first of all and say create shortcuts here, and then that gives me a shortcut to that folder I created. And I'll highlight that folder, I'll hit F2 to rename, and I'll change it to be View Foldit New Demo. And I can go back to Windows Explorer, I'll go back into that directory, and I'll locate foldit.exe, and again I'll right click and drag that toward the desktop, and then select create shortcuts here, and voila, a shortcut. And once again I will hit F2 and rename it to Foldit New Demo. And then the other thing is my editor shortcut, and I use good old Vim, my favorite editor back from the Stone Age. And since I have these existing shortcuts set up, I can just drag one down here, say copy here, and I will indeed get a copy. And I'll say edit Foldit New Demo. Again, I'm just F2 to rename and then typing in the new part. So that's more or less consistent with what I did. Now, since I copied that existing shortcut, what I want to do is go into Properties, and that still has the old folder in it. So I'll just try typing the new name, and it finds it right away, and there we are. The target here depends on your editor, but what I'm telling my editor is called gvim.exe is the name of the actual program, and I'm telling it to just go after scriptlogstar.xml, so anything that's named scriptlog something.xml, so that will pick up the script logs from all the tracks in this client. As it so happens, I only use the default track. I don't actually use tracks, and so there's normally only one script log in a directory. So now one issue that you still have with this is all my Foldit clients are going to kind of look alike when they're running, and so you can see over here on the numbers 1 through 8, I've given them custom icons, and so let's take a look at how to do that. So to create a custom icon, I use a program called IcoFX, and this is a free program that I found, and I installed the portable version of it. one that you can just move around without having to worry about the Windows registry or anything like that. What you can do is open up an existing icon file. That's my previous directory. Let's go up into Foldit New Demo, and there's an icon in there. Then you can just grab the text tool here, start to type. You can pick a font. There's tons of fonts. Pick something like Alt Arial Black. And I want to go for the maximum size and just type in the letters ND, let's say. Oops, that's no good. So I'm going to do that again, and I'll switch these colors and try that again. Okay, not too bad. And then I may just want to drag that text to be as large as possible to make it really clear what we're dealing with here. Okay, so that's not too bad. And so the trick of an icon file is that you have multiple resolutions, and at least using this tool, you have to do the same thing at each resolution. So there I have all my resolutions. I'll just say save, and then I'll just put that window down. And now you notice we're still using the same default Foldit icon here. So to actually get that to stick, you have to go in Properties, say Change Icon. Seems to have the right icon there, but you actually have to browse. Okay, now we're seeing the one with my latest update. So basically Windows does something strange, is there's some kind of cache there and doesn't pick up that icon change right away. Okay, so now it's seeing the modified icon on the desktop here, and if I start up the program, and voila, there it is through the magic of television. And so now if I minimize this and go down to my taskbar, I'll also see the smallest resolution of that icon there in the taskbar. So having that custom icon makes it easy to know which client is which when you're running multiple clients. Okay, so that's basically a quick version of why my desktop got to be this complicated and how you can do it yourself. This does raise a couple of questions about maintaining this somewhat complex setup. So let's go back to Windows Explorer here. And what I actually like to do is periodically go through, and when everything's shut down, I go through and delete all these client folders. Now I keep this one called Foldit Repository. I never delete that one, but the other ones are fair game. Then I reinstall the client from a fresh download from the website, and then I copy it over and basically create this same folder structure again. And so there are just a couple of things that you have to worry about then. One of them would be your custom foldit.ico. So if you have that custom icon, you may want to save that so you don't have to redo the work of editing that again. And then the second part is your all.macro file that contains all your recipes. What I like to do with that is that I use this Foldit repository client as my one IRC connected client. So that's a client that I use for in-game chat. And I also use that to maintain my recipe file and some things like that. And so we go back to Windows Explorer and go up here to the Foldit level. I have various batch files that just copy the all.macro file. So this is just a simple batch file that copies the all.macro file from Foldit repository, and I'll copy it up to my network drive, and here it'll copy it to each of my 8 game playing clients. Then it will just pause at the end so I can see what it did, see that there weren't any errors. Aside from all.macro, the other file that you may want to keep around is options.txt, and that has all the various Foldit settings in it. One of the most important is the update group. So here this is set to dev-prev, so you can also have update group of main or experimental. Basically the 3 files that I worry about when I'm replacing these folders is the foldit.ico, the Foldit icon file, the all.macro file, and again I just maintain those from a single source, and that source never gets replaced. And then options.txt, and you can always just copy options.txt from a client where you're happy with all the different options. And the main reason that you want to do that, we'll go back to the folder here. If you scroll down a bit, there are a lot of these IR solution files that end up lying around. And so you may have some of them with sort of time signatures in them here in the main folder for your client. And then if you drill down under the puzzles folder, pick up a particular puzzle, you'll see more IR solution files in there. Those can end up taking a lot of space, and so it's just good to get rid of them once in a while and good to get rid of whatever other junk accumulated in your folder, and there you go. That's basically the quick introduction to how I run multiple clients in the Windows environment. I hope this helps, and keep on folding.